My name is Vicky Hammond. I'm 31 years old. And this is the story of how I woke up one cold Christmas morning and realized, in the harshest way imaginable, that I wasn't part of my own family anymore. December 25th, 8:12 a.m. The light slipped through the crack in the curtains and burned my eyes before I could even move. I blinked, then jolted upright. We were supposed to leave at 7 a.m. sharp. 4 cars. 17 people. One winter resort in Snow Pine Ridge, New Hampshire, a trip we had planned for months. And I had coordinated every detail. But the house was dead quiet. I called out, "Mom?" Then louder, "Dylan? Angie?" Nothing. Just the low hum of the furnace and the scent of old coffee in the air. No suitcases near the door. No familiar chaotic shuffle of my parents bickering over what bags go in which car. I ran to the front window, my breath fogging up the glass. My car, the one I wasn't supposed to drive because we were using the rentals, sat alone in the snow-covered driveway. The 3 rented SUVs, each capable of carrying multiple family members and their gear? Gone. Without a trace. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone, thinking surely there had been some change in plans. A text. A missed call. Something. Nothing. No notifications. No alarms. No, where are you? Not even running late? I scrolled through our family group chat, the same one we had used to coordinate gifts, menus, routes, playlists, and meal preferences for Grandma, and that's when the real shock hit me. I wasn't in it anymore. That same chat I had created. Gone. Like I'd never existed in it at all. I called Mom. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice upbeat and sweet, like everything was completely normal. "Vicky, good morning, sweetheart. Just waking up?" I swallowed hard. "Is everyone gone already?" Silence. Then a slight hesitation. "Oh. I thought you were in Angie's car." Things were hectic. Everyone assumed. "No," I said flatly. "I'm still at home." That pause on the other end grew longer. Then, like she was brushing lint off her sweater, she said, "Oh dear. Must have been a mix-up. We all thought someone else woke you." I stood there in the center of the kitchen, staring at the half-eaten breakfast plates still on the counter, eggs, bacon, toast, all cold now, clearly made this morning. "Just not for me." "Maybe you can catch a flight later," she suggested. "Don't be mad, honey. We'll make it up to you." I didn't respond. I hung up. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A message from my sister Angie. 1 line. 1 mistake. "Oh crap, wrong person. Ignore this." Attached was a screenshot. A group chat I wasn't supposed to see. One message stood out. "She's not here. Mission accomplished." They didn't forget me. They removed me. They had talked about this. Planned it. Built an entire system behind my back just to make sure I wouldn't come. It's hard to describe what that does to a person, to realize the people you thought were your family didn't just leave you out. They made sure you were out. It wasn't an accident. I sat at the kitchen table, hands trembling. I remembered the Google Sheets I made for this trip. The budget spreadsheet I emailed to everyone. The way I split up the room assignments so Grandma wouldn't share a space with the kids because of her back issues. I paid the entire reservation deposit myself. $13,920. The email confirmation was still in my inbox. The irony? The resort reservations were all under my name. They were enjoying the luxury cabins, ski passes, and evening banquets, all paid for by the woman they voted out. I wasn't just the invisible child. I was their unpaid concierge. I opened my laptop. There it was. The email from Pine Hollow Lodge. 6 premium cabins. Reserved for the Everett family. That's us. I looked at the line, lead guest, Vicky Hammond. I clicked into the reservation portal. A glowing orange button said, Modify reservation. Below it, a line in red. Cancellations within 48 hours are non-refundable. I stared at it for a long while. My hands were cold. But something inside me was starting to burn. I called the resort. Pine Hollow Lodge, this is Marcy speaking. How can I help you? This is Vicky Hammond. I have a reservation starting tomorrow, under Everett family? Yes, ma'am. We've got you down for 6 deluxe cabins and the family Christmas package. Check-in is scheduled for. I need to cancel the entire thing. There was a pause. All 6 cabins? Yes. Another pause. Then her voice turned more careful. Is everything all right? I told her the truth. Not all the details, just the part that mattered. They left me out. They're already there. But they didn't include me. And I paid for all of it. She put me on hold to speak to her manager. 5 minutes later, she returned. We're making an exception. A full refund will be issued within 5 business days. Confirmation has been sent to your email. I thanked her and hung up. Then I started printing. I pulled every exported message I could find from the iCloud backup folder I had helped Abby create months ago. Group chats. Screenshots. Comments about me being too dramatic. Mom saying, let her pay. She's always willing. Abby replying, if she finds out, it's already too late. I wasn't crying anymore. I was documenting. I placed the messages into a folder, marked it in red, evidence. Not because I planned to sue them. But because I needed proof I hadn't imagined this. Then I packed a suitcase. Passport. Linen clothes. 1 novel. And booked a flight to Bali, leaving the next morning from JFK. It cost nearly what I'd just refunded. But this time, it was for me. No itinerary. No group chat. No one to ask what room they were in or who wanted almond milk for their coffee. I called a locksmith named Howard. Holiday rate is steep, he said. That's fine. Tonight? He showed up within the hour. Changed every lock. I handed him $100 bill and shook his hand. You'd be surprised, he said, how many folks change their locks this time of year. I smiled. My first real one all day. Then I opened the family group chat. The one they'd kicked me out of, and apparently added me back to in a panic. The messages had started pouring in. Naomi, what's going on? There's no reservation here. The front desk can't find anything. Mom is freaking out. Vicky, answer your phone right now. I typed one line. I canceled it. I also read everything you wrote about me. This is your first honest Christmas. Then I powered off my phone. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt free. The snow was falling in soft layers outside my window as I zipped my suitcase shut. The streets of Vermont were silent except for the occasional hiss of tires skidding over icy pavement, and inside my home, for once, there was no noise but the sound of my own breathing. No one calling my name to ask where their gloves were, no one banging pots in the kitchen, no tension hanging in the air that I had to smooth over. I was completely alone. And I'd never felt more in control. The email confirming my full refund from Pine Hollow Lodge had arrived. $13,920. Processed. No more family vacation. No fondue night. No sleigh rides under string lights. No catered Christmas Eve dinner with their names on gold place cards. I imagined their faces standing at the check-in counter, confused, indignant. Maybe Mom was already yelling. Maybe Dad was trying to pull up the confirmation on his phone. But there was nothing to show. I didn't owe them a response. Not after what I'd read. That night, I microwaved a simple bowl of soup and sat by the fire with a fleece blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I didn't look at my phone. I didn't want to ruin the peace I had finally carved out from all the noise. But eventually, curiosity won. The messages had doubled. Dozens of them. Abby, Ethan, Zach, even my mother, each with their own spin on what had just happened. The recurring theme? I was overreacting. Vicky, this was supposed to be a happy time. Why would you ruin it for everyone? Just call us back. Let's fix this. You can't seriously be mad over a misunderstanding. But it wasn't a misunderstanding. And I wasn't mad. I was finished. Then came the message that nearly made me laugh. From my dad. You're acting like you didn't do worse last year. This is petty and childish. Worse? What had I done last year, Dad? Spent 4 hours setting up the Christmas tree while everyone watched TV? Reheated dinner plates so Mom could pretend she'd cooked them herself? Paid for Zach's last-minute gift for his girlfriend when he forgot? Their version of worse was my version of being useful. I ignored the texts and powered off the phone again. I spent the rest of the evening watching the snow collect on the window ledge, candle burning beside me. I thought about all the moments I had swallowed my pride, not for harmony, but because I didn't think I was worth defending. That narrative had held me hostage for years. I was always the helper, the backup plan, the default. Never the priority. Until now. By 6:30 the next morning, I was at the airport. The suitcase glided behind me smoothly, my passport snug in the pocket of my coat. No one called. No one met me at the gate. For the first time in 31 years, I wasn't someone's chauffeur, scheduler, gift wrapper, or emergency contact. I was Vicky. Just Vicky. And I was going to Bali. The flight was long, over 20 hours with the layover, but for once, I didn't mind being unreachable. The longer the plane cut through clouds, the more distance I put between me and their expectations. I arrived in Denpasar on December 27th. Stepping into the warm, humid air was like stepping into an entirely new version of myself. The resort was paradise, private villa, outdoor shower, a view of the sea. I didn't take pictures for Instagram. I didn't text anyone back. I let the sun touch my skin. Let the silence wrap around me like silk. Every morning, I took walks by the shoreline, toes pressed into wet sand. Every evening, I sat under paper lanterns strung between palm trees and wrote in my leather journal, not the one where I documented all the ways they'd used me, but a new one. This one was for me. 3 days into the trip, I opened my phone to check on the house security system. 4 cars were parked in the driveway. They were home. All of them. The kitchen cam showed Mom standing by the fridge, arms folded. Abby sat at the counter, scrolling through her phone. Zach paced near the sink. Ethan leaned against the wall, silent. They weren't speaking. Not to each other. The weight of their choices had finally settled in. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. Later that afternoon, I messaged Rachel, my cousin, the only one who had reached out with something close to decency. She replied within minutes. They're angry. They're spinning it. But I think they're scared. Scared of what? I asked. Of what you might do next. Because now they know you were the glue. And they broke you. I didn't reply right away. But later that night, I sent her a short message. If they ask about their stuff, tell them it's all in the garage. Labeled. Keys in the mailbox. She only responded with 2 words. I understand. And she did. I returned home on January 3rd. The Vermont sky was heavy with clouds, the same slate-gray stretch it had always been. But my house looked different now. Still and clean, untouched since I left. The locks were new. The air inside smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke. And it was all mine. I made tea. I played soft jazz. I watered the plants that had survived the week alone. They looked stronger, oddly enough. Just like me. At 6:17 p.m., headlights lit up the front lawn. 4 cars. Familiar footsteps. A chorus of voices outside my door. I didn't move. I opened the home security app and watched them gather on the porch. Mom was holding a Tupperware container. Abby looked defiant. Zach held a manila envelope. Dad stood apart, rubbing his temple like the weight of this meeting already exhausted him. They knocked. I answered. They stepped in, one by one, like kids called to the principal's office. No one spoke. I stood at the center of the living room, arms crossed. Did everyone read the letter I left? Mom nodded. Abby shrugged. We read it. Good, I said. Because I'm not here to explain myself. I'm here to give you terms. And that's exactly what I did. I laid out 3 non-negotiables. Rent. Repayment. Respect. Live here? Pay rent at market rate. Every cent I'd covered over the last 3 years, from the mortgage to Abby's car repair, would be formalized. Signed. No more vague promises. And if anyone wanted a future relationship with me? It had to be based on honesty. No more secret group chats. No more jokes at my expense. No more treating me like an employee. Dad asked, "Is this how family works now? With contracts?" I met his eyes without flinching. If family can plot to leave me behind on Christmas, then yes. This is how it works now. He didn't argue. Zach agreed. Quietly. Respectfully. Mom cried. Soft tears, the kind that were more ashamed than sorry. Abby? Abby said nothing. Just sat there, the silence thick between us. You really want to burn it all down, she whispered. I shook my head. You already did. I'm just not pretending it's still standing. Then I handed them each a folder. The new terms of our relationship. The room was quiet except for the crackling of the fireplace. Abby sat still with her arms crossed, refusing to look up as I laid the final document on the table. I didn't expect applause. I didn't even expect compliance. But I did expect them to finally listen. You can take these home, read them. But if you want to stay here, rent is due by the 3rd of each month, I said, calm as ever. Utilities are split evenly. And no one gets special treatment. Mom opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Dad took his folder with both hands, eyes scanning the front page. I knew that look, the one he used when pretending something was negotiable. But this wasn't. No one would be living in my home for free anymore. You're serious about this? Zach asked. Yes. He nodded slowly. Okay. I'll pay. I've been freeloading for too long. I'll sign whatever you want. That surprised me, not because I didn't think Zach had it in him, but because it was the first time I'd heard him admit to taking advantage. A real, honest acknowledgement. The kind I'd long stopped expecting. Mom turned to me, her eyes red and puffy. I didn't realize we hurt you this much. You didn't want to realize, I replied softly. Then Dad cleared his throat. I'll speak to the credit union. I can start repayments next month. It might take a while, but I'll make good on it. That left only one person. Abby. Still silent. Still angry. She finally pushed the folder away from her like it was a dirty napkin. You think this makes you powerful, Vicky? Getting a refund, sending a petty email? You're just bitter. I stepped toward her, slow and sure. No. I was bitter for years. I'm beyond that now. This isn't power. It's peace. Something none of you ever gave me. You canceled Christmas for 17 people, she snapped. You canceled me, I said flatly. You made a group chat just to plot it. I read the messages. She's not here. Mission accomplished. You called me dead weight. Abby's face went pale. I pulled my phone out, tapped once, and showed her the screenshot. Her name at the top of the thread. Her words in plain text. She looked away. That was enough. Ethan, who had been silent this whole time, stepped forward. Vicky, I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want to apologize. I saw everything in that chat. I didn't say anything. I didn't stop it. Why? I asked him, not unkindly. He exhaled. Because I didn't think you'd fight back. You never did. That was the truest thing anyone had said all day. They didn't think I'd fight back. They were used to me taking it. The scheduling, the last-minute favors, the forgotten birthdays, the mockery veiled as jokes. And me, smiling through it all, thinking that being quiet and useful made me valuable. But now? Now, I had become someone they didn't know how to respond to. A silence followed. A long, awkward stillness where the walls themselves seemed to be holding their breath. Then I said it. The one line I had rehearsed a dozen times. This house is mine. But what you decide to do from here, that's yours. Zach was the first to stand. I'll stay. I'll pay. Anne. I'll do better. Dad placed a hand on Mom's shoulder. She nodded slowly, picking up the folder again. We'll pay what we owe. Then they both left without another word. Abby remained seated. Ethan didn't even try to get her to stand. Eventually, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her alone. 3 days passed. No word from her. I got a text from Rachel, though. A short message, you did the right thing. They needed the wake-up call. Rachel had been the only one to show concern during the trip, the only one who hadn't said mission accomplished. She told me later, during a call, that she'd overheard the planning but felt outnumbered and guilty ever since. I should have warned you, she said. I just didn't know how. It's okay, I told her. You didn't write me off. That's enough. In fact, Rachel and I started talking more often after that. Texts turned into calls. Calls turned into lunch. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had family I could trust again, not out of duty, but out of real care. Zach, true to his word, paid his first rent on time. He even helped replace the basement light and shoveled the walkway without being asked. Mom and Dad sent me a formal repayment agreement, $1,000 monthly, with the first payment already deposited into my account. I didn't expect it to last, but I appreciated the gesture. It was a start. As for Abby? Nothing. Not even a text. She moved her stuff out a week later. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't even leave a note. She just vanished, like I was the one who had wronged her. But I didn't lose sleep over it. Because I had already lost too much. Instead, I focused on reclaiming pieces of my life. I rejoined my old photography group. Started a ceramics class on Tuesday nights. Even said yes to a short winter trip to Asheville, just me, a camera, and a little Airbnb near the woods. No spreadsheets. No group chats. No one needing me to fix anything. It felt strange at first, waking up without a list of other people's problems in my head. But slowly, I started to realize how badly I had needed that emptiness. That quiet. That freedom. When I returned from Asheville, I threw a small Sunday dinner. Just 5 people. Zach. Mom. Dad. Rachel. And Aunt Melanie, the only adult in the family who had ever once, even weakly, questioned what they were doing to me. I made lasagna from scratch. No one brought side dishes. No one was asked to help. Every plate had a tiny card that said, "Tonight, I listen. Only listen." It wasn't about confrontation. It was about communion. Real connection. Not obligation. We ate. We laughed. We talked about the weather, Zach's internship, Rachel's pregnancy. Not once did anyone bring up Christmas. No one dared. And that was fine by me. After the guests left, I stood by the window, watching the snow fall under the street lamp. My home was quiet again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I thought I would feel haunted after that dinner, that some part of me would ache for the family I'd tried so long to please. But as I stood at the sink that night, rinsing dishes in warm water and listening to the soft hum of the furnace, I felt something deeper than nostalgia or pain. I felt healed. Not fixed. Not whole. But healing. Finally. That weekend, I reorganized the house. Not because it was messy, but because it no longer felt like their home. It was mine. Every room had been shaped by their presence, their needs. Zach's old sneakers were still by the stairs. Abby's forgotten curling iron still sat in the bathroom drawer. My parents' favorite blanket draped across the living room chair like it belonged more than I did. So I started fresh. I painted the kitchen a warm cinnamon color. Moved the sofa. Put up new curtains. I even replaced the family photos. Not out of spite, but because none of them showed me smiling. Not really. Not truthfully. I replaced them with photos from my Asheville trip, foggy trees, coffee mugs on old wood porches, a candid selfie of me with wild hair and real laughter in my eyes. I sent a digital copy of one to Rachel. She texted back, "You look free." And I was. But freedom is quiet. And not everyone notices when you start to choose yourself. A week later, I got a text from Mom. "Can we talk? Just us? I won't bring Abby or Dad. I want to understand you better." We met at a small cafe downtown. She arrived before me, sitting alone with her hands clasped around a mug of black coffee, her eyes shadowed and soft. She looked older. Not in the physical sense, but in the way someone looks when they've finally been forced to reflect. I sat down across from her. "I didn't come for an apology," I said before she could speak. She nodded slowly. I figured. For a few minutes, neither of us said anything. Then, her voice broke through the silence. "I've been going to therapy," she said. "One of the group sessions. Your father refuses to join, but I'm going." I blinked, genuinely surprised. She continued. "It started when I saw your journal. The one from your drawer. The entries, about all the things you did for us." I cried for hours. I didn't answer. I let her speak. "I didn't realize how often I asked you to be the strong one. I thought I was praising you, calling you dependable, responsible. But I was just excusing myself from showing you love." I looked down at my tea, unsure what to say. The words were honest. More honest than I'd ever heard her speak before. "I remember your 16th birthday," she said. "I told Abby I'd take her dress shopping that day. And I told you I'd make it up to you." "You never did," I said quietly. "I know," she whispered. "And I'm not here to rewrite the past. I want a chance to learn from it. Not expect forgiveness. Just earn trust again." I exhaled, tension unwinding in small threads from my shoulders. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. She looked up, surprised. "I've spent years being angry," I continued. Quietly. Patiently. Until it turned me into someone who let people walk over her just to keep peace. I see that now, she said. I'm not asking you to make up for everything, I said. But I need you to see me. Not the helper. Not the reliable one. Me. She reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. Inside was a check for $1,000. The second repayment. Right on time. I slid it into my bag without a word. That night, I updated the lease agreement. Zach had already paid his rent for the second month, and even helped me set up a new compost bin in the backyard. He was slowly becoming someone different, not just in how he acted, but in how he looked at me. Like he finally saw his sister. Not a convenience. Dad hadn't spoken to me since the dinner. But he sent a check. Signed it. Dated it. No note. Just the transaction. Fine by me. Then there was Abby. She hadn't spoken to anyone. Not Mom. Not Zach. Not even Rachel. But Rachel had overheard that she was staying at a friend's apartment in Montpelier, working remote and not in the mood for family. I didn't feel bitterness toward her anymore. Just clarity. Some people hate you most when they know they've been exposed. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten. In Abby's loopy, too perfect cursive. Vicky. I don't know how to face you. I'm embarrassed, but also angry. Angry that it took this for me to realize how much I relied on you, and how little I appreciated it. I'm not writing to make amends. I'm not even sure I know how. But I wanted to say one thing. I've never felt more guilty than I did watching Mom cry when she realized you were missing that morning. I told myself you'd laugh it off. That you'd show up anyway. That you needed us more than we needed you. But when you didn't come, I knew I had been wrong. Maybe you were always the strongest one. Maybe that's what scared me. I don't expect you to respond. But I do expect that one day, I'll have to earn your respect again. Abby. I folded the letter and placed it in the back of my journal. Not to hold on to pain. But to remind myself of how far I had come. Some days, I reread it. Not to feel righteous, but to stay rooted in the truth. The truth that people will only treat you as disposable if you let them. The next Sunday, I cooked again. This time, it was a casual brunch with just Rachel and Zach. No agenda. No hidden lessons. Just waffles. Orange juice. Quiet joy. Zach brought a bouquet of tulips. For the hostess, he said with a bashful smile. Thanks, I said. And thanks for showing up. I always should have, he said. You didn't deserve any of what happened. I just went along with it. Why? He looked down. Because it was easier. I nodded. But not better. No, he said. Not better. He helped clear the table afterward. Rachel stayed to help me hang new photos in the hallway. At one point, she asked if I'd ever take another big family trip again. I thought about it. Maybe, I said. But only with people who actually want me there. Winter began to melt at the edges of the sidewalks, leaving behind puddles of slush and mud that reflected the pale sky. March arrived like an apology, cold, but trying. And for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing myself for another emotional storm. My days were full now. Not with obligations, not with last-minute family errands or crisis management texts from Abby or Mom. But with small, beautiful choices I had made for myself. I started each morning with silence and chamomile tea instead of frantic phone calls. I returned to my abandoned photography portfolio, bought a new lens, and spent hours exploring forgotten trails and icy riverbanks. And in that space of quiet creation, I began to reclaim not just my time, but my identity. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the snow in golden blush, Zach knocked on my door holding a dripping paper bag. Hope you're hungry, he said, lifting it like a peace offering. Inside, 3 kinds of dumplings and a sticky rice dessert. He'd driven 45 minutes to get them from my favorite Thai place. We sat on the floor like we used to when we were kids, back when everything felt simpler, back before the lines of favoritism were drawn in our family like territorial borders. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't bring up Christmas. Instead, he said, "You were always the one who kept us together. And I let them break you." I looked at him, chopsticks paused midair. "I didn't mean to," he continued. "But I did. Because I was selfish. And because I thought you'd always be there." I set my food down. "I thought that too," I said quietly. "I thought being useful would be enough to make them love me." He nodded, tears touching his voice. "And you were more than useful. You were everything." We didn't hug. We didn't cry dramatically. But the air between us shifted, not completely healed, but no longer cracked. That same week, I received a letter in the mail. Not from Abby. From my father. It was handwritten, the ink a little smudged, the corners of the envelope bent like he'd handled it too many times before sealing it. "Vicky. Your mother says I should write more. That I've spent most of your life being silent about the things that mattered. I think she's right. I was raised in a house where men didn't apologize. They fixed things, or they ignored them until they went away. And I guess I thought if I just stayed quiet, you'd think I was strong. But I watched you that night at the house. Calm, clear, unapologetic. And it made me realize that I've been mistaking silence for strength. You were the strongest person in the room. You always were. I didn't protect you from their cruelty. I didn't step in when I should've. I let you take on more than any one daughter should. But I see it now. And I want to do better. Your rent contract is fair. Your repayment plan even fairer. But I know what I owe can't be measured in dollars. I hope someday you'll let me make it up to you. Not with money. But with effort. Love. Dad." I read the letter 3 times. Then folded it and placed it next to Abby's in the back of my journal. They weren't the same, but both marked a change I hadn't expected. And still, no word from her. Until one night in late March. I was just about to fall asleep when my phone buzzed. I considered ignoring it. But something told me to look. It was a text. From Abby. "I'm outside." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then pulled on a sweater, slid into my boots, and opened the front door. She stood at the bottom of the steps, bundled in a long coat, her hair wind-blown, eyes red. "Hi," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything. "I don't expect to come in," she continued. "I just wanted to say something. In person. Because text wouldn't be enough." I stepped outside and crossed my arms, waiting. She swallowed hard. "I was jealous of you." That caught me off guard. "I know it doesn't make sense," she rushed. "Everyone praised me. Mom paraded my career like a trophy. But when I looked at you, calm, dependable, always stepping in without needing applause, I felt exposed. Like I was built out of noise and performance, and you were real." I stayed silent. Abby looked down at her boots. And I hated that. I hated how much everyone relied on you. Even me. I never wanted to admit that the reason our holidays, our plans, our whole damn family functioned, was because of you. She looked up. "I wanted this Christmas to be peaceful. That's what I told myself. But the truth is, I just wanted you gone. So I didn't have to feel lesser next to you." The cold stung my cheeks. But her words stung more. "Why now?" I asked. "Why say this now?" Her face crumbled. "Because I've had 3 months to live without you. And I hate who I was without you around." I let that settle. I didn't rush to comfort her. I didn't step forward. Finally, I said, I'm not the same person you cut out of that trip. She nodded. I know. I'm not here to comfort your guilt. I know that too. I don't hate you, I said. But you don't get to walk back and like nothing happened. I don't want to, she whispered. I just want to earn back the chance. I nodded slowly. Then start by respecting the boundaries I set. From now on, I'm not the planner. I'm not the fixer. I'm not the fallback. Abby exhaled, misty breath curling into the night. I'll do whatever it takes. I didn't invite her in. But I didn't shut the door either. She walked back to her car. And I stood in the doorway, watching the brake lights disappear into the snow. Later that night, I journaled a single sentence. Forgiveness isn't a key, it's a gate. And you decide when to open it. April arrived with its strange blend of thawing winds and sudden sun, and with it came a softness to life I hadn't known in years. The kind of softness that doesn't come from people around you changing, but from no longer needing them to. I went back to work at the elementary school just before spring break ended. It felt oddly grounding. Familiar hallways, the scent of dry erase markers, children's voices bouncing through corridors. None of them knew what had happened over the holidays, not really, but a few coworkers asked how my Christmas trip had gone. I gave a small smile. It got cancelled, I said. Not a lie. Not the full truth either. But I wasn't ready to tell that story out loud, not to people who still saw family as a word that always meant comfort. A week later, I met with my therapist, Dr. Laura, again. Her office was warm, cluttered with books and soft lighting. She smiled as I walked in, her eyes sharp with kindness. You look different, she said. I raised an eyebrow. New haircut? No, she replied. Like someone who stopped asking for permission to exist. I laughed, a small, real one. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped waiting to be loved the right way. We spent that session not dissecting the betrayal, we had done that enough, but talking about what came next. You've drawn boundaries, she said. But now you have to decide what kind of life lives inside them. That question stayed with me. I thought about it during my walks through town. When I browsed bookstores. When I passed cafes I used to sit in with Abby, sipping coffee while pretending her barbed comments didn't sting. I wasn't pretending anymore. Then came a message from Mom. Vicky, would you consider coming over for Sunday lunch? Just me and Dad. No pressure. I hesitated. The old me would have said yes immediately. Out of politeness. Out of guilt. Out of habit. But I waited. I breathed. And then I said, yes. But only if we keep it honest. No deflections. No minimizing. Her reply was instant, agreed. Sunday came, and I drove the 12 minutes to their modest rental in Westford, the same one they had moved into after I laid down the rules about my house. The apartment was clean, small, and strangely quiet. For once, the TV wasn't blasting the news. The table was already set. Mom opened the door. Her eyes looked softer than before, like the months had worn her down in the right ways. Dad stood behind her, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual but failing miserably. I made that lemon chicken you used to like, Mom said as I walked in. I remember, I replied, taking my coat off. We ate with more silence than talk, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was cautious. Like we were stepping into a room that had once collapsed and now needed to be rebuilt, brick by brick. Halfway through, Dad set down his fork. I read your journal, he said suddenly. The one you kept with all the family loans. The list of things you did. I tensed slightly. I didn't know you kept track, he continued. I didn't, I said. Not at first. I started writing them down as a joke. But the longer the list got, the more it felt like it was the only place I existed. He winced. That hurt to read. It hurt to live, I replied. We all sat quietly with that truth for a moment. Then Mom said, I don't want to defend myself. But I do want to say something. We didn't think of you as less. We thought of you as already okay. That stung more than anything. Because it was exactly the lie I had told myself for years. That's the problem, I said. You thought my silence meant strength. That my absence in family photos meant I didn't care. That I didn't need what the others got. Mom reached across the table and touched my hand, lightly, like testing if I'd pull away. I know now. You were never okay. You were just quiet. I didn't pull away. We didn't cry. There were no grand declarations of change. But when I left that day, I felt something click into place. Not forgiveness, but permission. Permission to move forward without dragging the weight of their failures behind me. That week, I wrote a list in my new journal. Not the things I'd done for them, but the things I'd now do for me. Travel without asking. Say no without guilt. Create without apologizing. Love people who love me back. Let silence be peace, not punishment. It was a short list. But it felt like the beginning of something real. Abby hadn't reached out since that night she stood in the snow. Until she did. An email. Subject line, Olive Branch. Vicky. I won't ask for another conversation. But I wanted to let you know I've been talking to Dr. Laura too. She said if I want to rebuild trust, it has to start with truth. So here's mine. I resented you because you never needed the spotlight to feel important. And I did. I still do. I'm working on it. I hope, someday, when you're ready, we can try something new. No guilt. No family politics. Just two adults seeing each other clearly. Abby. I didn't reply. Not right away. Maybe not ever. But I printed it and slipped it into my journal anyway. Because it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me knowing I could move on, with or without her. That spring, I booked another trip. Portugal this time. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post about it. I didn't coordinate it around anyone else's availability. I went because I wanted to. And as the plane took off, I wrote one sentence in my journal. This time, I didn't need revenge. Just distance. And it was enough. Portugal welcomed me with warm light and salt-laced air. Lisbon's hills stretched in soft pastels, and each morning I wandered without agenda, no maps, no schedules, no one waiting on me or asking what time dinner was. It was the first vacation I'd ever taken where I didn't have to account for anyone else's comfort. I drank espresso on balconies and sketched rooftops in my journal. I wandered into hidden bookshops and bought secondhand poetry in languages I didn't understand. It didn't matter. What mattered was how small and free I felt, not in a powerless way, but in a finally unburdened kind of way. This trip wasn't about running from the past. It was about standing in a future I had built for myself. One quiet morning, I sat on the stone edge of the Alfama district, camera in my lap, and thought about what had happened. How one holiday, one silent, sharp betrayal, had shattered my illusion of belonging. And how that shattering had made room for something better. Truth. Not just about my family. But about me. When I got back home in mid-May, the snow was gone. My garden had started to sprout little green shoots I didn't remember planting. The house felt different, not haunted anymore, but lived in. On the kitchen table was a small stack of mail, a potted plant from Rachel with a note that read, "Welcome home, to your own story." I smiled, placing it on the windowsill. Zach greeted me an hour later with a sheepish grin and a new repair he'd done in my absence, the front gate that had been squeaking all winter. He didn't ask for praise. He just handed me the receipt and said, "I took care of it. Rent's already transferred, too." Mom texted a week later. Dinner? No pressure. I replied, not yet. But maybe soon. And then came something unexpected. A small envelope in the mailbox with no return address. Inside was a photograph. One I had never seen. It was of me, years ago, standing at the lake cabin during one of our family trips. I was laughing, off-center, my arms full of marshmallow bags and paper towels. It was blurry, unposed. But my joy in that photo was real. Tucked behind it was a folded note. You always held everything. And I never noticed until I had to carry something myself. Abby. No apology. No plea. Just acknowledgement. That was enough for now. And so, I did what I never would have done before. I framed it. Not because I wanted to forgive her fully. But because it reminded me of who I was, before I let their silence define me. Before I let being useful become my whole identity. The photograph now hangs in the hallway across from my Asheville print. The two images face each other like bookends of a life reclaimed. In June, I hosted another dinner. This time, it wasn't small. I invited only those who had chosen to be part of my life in truth. Zach, Rachel, Aunt Melanie, and even Mom, who brought a pear tart she made herself from scratch. Abby didn't come. But she sent flowers. No note. Just the gesture. We ate outside under string lights I had strung along the porch. Zach told the worst jokes, Rachel shared baby names she was considering, and Aunt Melanie regaled us with dramatic readings from her retirement bucket list. And me? I just listened. Really listened. Because now I didn't have to carry every conversation. I didn't have to ensure everything ran smoothly. I was no longer the backup plan. I was just Vicky. Fully present. Fully chosen. And when I stood up to clear plates, Zach stopped me. We've got this. I sat back down. Not as a helper. Not as the person responsible for everyone else's happiness. But as a guest. In my own life. Later that evening, as twilight painted the sky with streaks of lavender and gold, I walked through the house barefoot, the floors warm with sunlight. I passed my new photos on the wall, ran my fingers along the spines of books I had begun collecting again, and paused by the mirror near the stairs. I didn't look tired anymore. I looked like someone who had finally stepped out of the role everyone else wrote for her, and written her own. That night, I sat down and drafted a new letter. One I wouldn't send. One I wrote just for me. Dear Vicky. You were never weak. You were never dramatic. You were never too sensitive. You were exhausted. You were overlooked. You were expected to hold it all, and when you fell, they called it failure. But now? You've returned to yourself. You've rebuilt a life without needing anyone's permission to exist. Keep going. Not out of anger. Out of freedom. Me. I tucked the letter into the back of my journal, the same one that once held my hurt. It now held my healing. And that's how the story ends, not with revenge, not with applause, but with quiet, irrevocable change. Because sometimes, the loudest justice is living well, and never again begging for a seat at the table you built. Vicky's story is a sobering reminder that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from those who claim to love you the most, not through dramatic betrayals, but through silence, exclusion, and the belief that you'll always be there, no matter what. But Vicky did what so many never find the courage to do, she stood up. She stepped away. And she turned a painful rejection into a powerful reckoning. Let this be a reminder, you don't need to earn your place in anyone's life. You don't need to carry the weight of being easy to love. You just need to start loving yourself enough to say, enough. What do you think about Vicky's choices? Was she too strong, or just strong enough? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where real stories reveal the truths no one else dares to say.